Hi everyone, welcome to today's Sharks for Kids webinar for Angel Shark Day. Really excited today to have Michael Seeley from the Angel Shark Project talk to us all about angel sharks. Michael is based out in the Canary Islands and he's going to tell us a little bit about the work that the Angel Shark Project does and what exactly angel sharks are. So Michael, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit further and the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. As you said, yeah, my name is Michael Seeley. I am project officer of the Angel Shark Project that's mainly based here in the Canary Islands. I'll show you a map about where the Canary Islands is later on because some people, I guess, still are not sure. And anyway, I've been passionate about sharks since very young, and I always knew I wanted to work with and dive with sharks. And so, with a lot of efforts, I finally made it. And today, I'd like to talk to you about my favorite shark, the angel shark, because today it's a very special day. Also, today is the very first International Angel Shark Day, and so it's a pleasure to be here today talking about this amazing angel shark, the mysterious angel shark, because as we'll see, there's still lots that we need to know about it. So, Angel Shark Project Canary Islands is a project that started back in 2014, and it's a project based on a collaboration of three entities, that is the Zoological Society of London, the Coin Museum in Germany, and the University of Las Palmas de Gran Canaria here in the Canary Islands. Those three entities together, they are like the umbrella for this project. And the aim of the project is to secure the future of the critically endangered angel shark in its unique stronghold, the Canary Islands. Because this angel shark was distributed along, had a bigger distribution, but right now the Canary Islands is the only stronghold where we still have sort of healthy population, and we can regularly see angel sharks around the islands. So with 5 members right now working on this project, and it all started with Eva Meyers and Joanna we have down here. And we also come with loads of collaborators and volunteers that help us out, and without them, it would not be possible. So let's get into business, okay? The angel shark, and we have it here. Actually, we have an image of an angel shark. But what is an angel shark, in fact? Because when we look at this image, okay, what we're seeing is a fish. It's pretty flat, okay? And it would be easily confused with other marine species, for example, a ray or a skate, or many fishermen confuse angel sharks with monkfish, for example, or even with big flounders. And we can see that there are some resemblances with these other animals. But we're going to see in a second that angel sharks are in fact sharks, and they have some characteristics that make them be sharks. So when we check out the classification, okay, we can see that sharks, angel sharks are obviously in the animal kingdom, included in the Chordata phylum. They're vertebrates, obviously. They're in the Gnathostomata infraphylum. That includes all the fish with the jaw, okay? They're in a superclass called Pisces, okay, we have all the fish. And then inside the Pisces group, we have the Chondrichthyes, where we have all the fish that have cartilaginous skeleton. In this class, we have the Chimera, okay, those weird-looking fish that live usually at very deep. We have skates, we have rays, we have mantas and mobula rays, we have sawfish, guitarfish, and obviously the typical sharks we all know of. So angel sharks are included in the shark group, even though they are very similar to rays, okay, it's the Bathyidea group. Now, there are 2 characteristics I'm just going to tell you for you to realize that sharks are where they should be. They are sharks, and that's where they belong. Okay, I bet many of you have been to aquariums and seen this cute image of a skate, okay, against the glass. And this image is really useful to see those characteristics that differentiate sharks and rays. So let's have a look at the first characteristic, and that is the gills, the position of the gill slits. Now, when we have a look at skates and rays, those gill slits are ventral. They're on the bottom of the animal, okay? Completely ventral position. Whereas if we look at angel sharks, okay, their gill slits are, we can see them a bit ventrally, okay, we can see them underneath, but the gill slits go over the side of the body of the animal. So it's a big difference, okay, that makes all the difference. So the gill slits is one of those characteristics that makes the angel sharks be included in the shark group. The other characteristic is the position of the mouth. If you look at the mouth of the rays, okay, the mouth is also in a ventral position. This is due to mainly to their diets. They eat on the bottom. They eat things that are on the sediments or hiding in the sediments, okay, and that's why their mouth has this position. Whereas if we look at the angel sharks, we see that its mouth is terminal. It's right at the end of the body, like in most all the other sharks. Okay, the mouth is right here at the end, and as we'll see later on, it has to also with their feeding habits. So those two main characteristics are the ones that you can use to be able to differentiate an angel shark from any type of ray or skate in the future. So if you see an angel shark and you have any doubts, use those two characteristics. So now we know that an angel shark is in fact a shark. Okay, I do have to say, among the sharks, it's very resemblant to rays in the fact that, as many other rays and skates, it can bury itself in the sediment, and it mostly spends most of its life hiding in the sediments, usually on sandy bottoms. Now, when it hides, it's very hard to find. It's very hard for divers that are not used to find them to actually see them because their camouflage is really, really good. Each species has a sequence, okay, of trying to bury itself in sediment. Okay, there's different sequences depending on the species, and they spend most of the time buried there. So at first, it's actually the first challenge for anyone who wants to observe or study angel sharks is actually to find them. It's one of the difficult parts. Here we can see Eva Meyers and one of our collaborators, Felipe. They're both observing this angel shark here in the middle. But here we have some other images of buried angel sharks. Here at the top left, we have this juvenile. And basically all we can see is these two tiny eyes. Oh, here we actually only see one of them, and a bit of the shape of the dorsal and caudal fins at the back. But it's very hard to distinguish. Here we have an adult buried in the sands. Also, all we can really distinguish is the silhouette of the shark buried in the sands. And here we have another baby, a juvenile, with only its eyes and a bit of its mouth popping out of the sand. So as I said, they're masters of camouflage and they spend most of their life buried in the sands like this. So that's one of the things that make it challenging to observe and to study this shark. And that's one of the reasons why it's so unknown. The shark, the angel sharks, as you probably know, they ambush their prey. They wait for especially small fish or cuttlefish to swim on top of them. And once they're exactly at the right place, the angel shark will leap up, protrude its jaw, the jaw will completely come out, and it will grab its prey and then bury itself back in the sands. Okay, this preying ambush is super fast. Okay, it happens in less than a second, and it's I've seen it a couple of times, and it's crazy when you see it. And the poor fish that is eaten, I doubt it realizes what's just happened. Here I'm going to show you a video Okay, so you can see the sequence of how an angel shark buries itself under the sand. Um, Sorry about my computer, it's going a bit slow. Let's see the loads. Sorry guys, internet. So this video is from Océanos de Fuego. Okay. And here we have an angel shark that's burying itself in the sand. As you see, it does this wavy movement with its body. And then it does this last movement where it arches its pectoral fins like that and does this last movement to completely bury itself under the water, under the sand, sorry. This one hasn't done a great job at it. We can still see him. It might have been because of the pressure of someone recording him. But yeah, the camouflage is very good. And here we have another video, this one from Ravina. If you want more videos, go to his profile because he has great videos of angel sharks. And in this video, we can see an angel shark in slow motion opening its door. Okay, sometimes they do this to yawn, but you can see perfectly how the angel shark protrudes its jaw, opens it up, and that would be the movement it does to ambush its prey and catch little fish or squids, cuttlefish hovering on top. In this image, you will also appreciate it has these two barbels at the front. These little barbels are unique to each species of angel shark, and those barbels are thought to be very sensitive. Okay, with those barbels, they can detect vibrations, and it helps them also to catch their prey. So yeah, after those two cool videos, okay, let's continue. So this video, okay, of being under the sediment and hiding most of the time under the sediment makes angel sharks very vulnerable to a fishing technique called bottom trawling. Bottom trawling are huge nets that stay open thanks to big metallic doors at the sides that keep the nets open. Now the boats drag these nets along the bottom, okay, and scoop up everything they find in their way. So obviously an angel shark that is buried in the sand will have no escape from this net if it goes in its path, or if it gets in its path. So this is the reason why in many places of the world, angel sharks have disappeared or nearly completely disappeared. And it's why they're in such a bad situation at the moment. So just some more information about angel sharks. There are in fact 25 species of angel sharks, even though there's a couple of species under revision because they're not sure if they might be other species but repeated. These angel sharks have been classified in these 5 groups depending on where we find them, and these groups have been established due to the resemblance of their DNA, of their genetic material. So we find this group of Europe, North Africa, and Asia. A group here of South Africa, when we have only one species. Australia has its 4 species. America has 5 species. And then we have all these other species that have been put in another like big box because they're not related to any of the rest of them, or not related as closely as to put them in one of the other groups. So angel sharks, they are all pretty similar. Okay, some of the differences of angel sharks are the patterns on their body. Okay, for example, this one, the Pterotheliatoides, have these black blotches, these black spots in the back. We shouldn't trust the coloring too much for classification because we've seen in Squatina, the one we're studying, that they can change the coloring a little bit, okay, depending on the sands and in their environment. But other characteristics to differentiate species, as I said before, are the bubbles and the shape of the bubbles, the shape of the heads, the proportions of their fins, pectoral fins, and the head itself, and some markings that are unique to each species. Here we have the Squatina africana, the one in the south of Africa, very unique, the shape of its head. And then we have down here a couple more, the ones we found around America. As you can see, they're all very similar. And it takes an expert to really be able to differentiate species at first sight. And down here we have the two most recent species that have been described. They are the Squatina David, that was described back in 2016. That is only 4 years ago in the Caribbean. And then we have this one, Squatina Barry, that was described in Brazil in 2018. Okay, only 2 years ago. Now, this is quite astonishing because this means and it just demonstrates again that we know very little about the oceans, and there's still so much to be discovered. So if any of you listening, you want to be a marine biologist when you're grown up, okay, just be encouraged to do so because there are still so many things to find out and to explore about the ocean. So anyway, from now on, I'm going to start speaking about the Squatina, the angel shark we're working in here in the Canary Islands, and the one we're aiming to protect here. The Squatina has patterns that can change, as I said. You can see quite a big variation in patterns of the body, of the colorings. But there's one thing that is unique to all of them. That is this black stripe on the pectoral fin. Okay? All Squatina have this black marking here. And that's one of the things that help us identify this species. So here in the Canary Islands, we only have this species of Squatina. The whole family was described in 2014 as the second most threatened family of elasmobranch in the world. So that's one of the things that encouraged this project to start, okay? Because it was a shark that we knew very little about, but at the same time, it was a shark that was very, very threatened. In the IUCN Red List, okay, it's classified as critically endangered. And for this reason, the commercial fishing was forbidden back in 2009. Okay, but this law had some loopholes because it was only applied for commercial fishers. It didn't apply to recreational fishers, and then there were some loopholes because there was no protocol on what to do if you catch one of these sharks by mistake. And then it didn't establish any need for recovery or conservation plans. So with the effort of a lot of people, last year we finally managed to include the Squatina in the National Catalogue of Endangered Species here in Spain. Okay, it was a huge success that was all over the press, and thanks to this, the angel shark now in Spain is under the maximum category of protection. Okay, this means not only can commercial fishermen not catch it, but recreational fishermen cannot catch it either. But not only that, we can't disturb it or destroy or disturb its habitat. So it has a full protection, and that guarantees its survival, at least here in the Canary Islands in the future. So right now, the angel shark, the Squatina, has the same level of protection as the Iberian lynx, that is an icon for the conservation of nature here in Spain. So what we want to do is try and get people to recognize angel sharks as an icon, you know, as an emblematic species for conserving. In the Canary Islands, one of the icons is the parrotfish, Spirosoma cretense, this parrotfish here. Well, one of our aims is to try and make the population see the angel sharks as one of these icons, just as, for example, the Plátano de Canarias, a famous banana that's cultivated here in the Canary Islands and that's appreciated all over Spain and Europe. So, as I said before, I would show you a map to show you where the Canary Islands is on the map. And we can see them down here on the east side of Africa, top east. So these are the Canary Islands. Okay. There are 8 islands in total, and there's a couple of small islets, but in total 8 declared islands. And we belong to Spain, we're part of Spain here. And on this map, we can see the original distribution of angel sharks, where of the squadina. The original distribution where we have records from the past that people have either observed or caught angel sharks. And we can see that they had quite a big distribution all over the North Baltic Sea, all around the coast of Spain and Portugal, down the east coast of Africa, Canary Islands, obviously, and the Mediterranean Sea, including the Black Sea. Okay. Now, as I said before, one of the biggest threats to angel sharks was trawler fishing. So, in many of these places of its original distribution, the angel shark has disappeared due to the overfishing, okay, of the species. Since year 2000, there has been recent sightings around Ireland and Wales in Britain. Okay. Also around the south of Italy, Turkey also, and here in the north of Africa. But in the north of Africa, it's quite complicated due to the conflicts that many of these countries are suffering. So there's a lack of information here. We have currently a colleague that's starting up a project in Libya to visit markets to see the presence of sharks there and angel sharks. And she's already sent us some photos of angel sharks in fish markets there. So we still need more data about this region here. But the numbers of angel sharks in Europe have nothing to do with the numbers here in the Canary Islands, where this project was established because it's the only place where we still regularly see angel sharks in the water. During our dives or snorkeling, it's quite frequent. Okay, with the dive that comes to the Canary Islands, there are some places and times of the year where they are nearly guaranteed 100% they're going to see angel sharks. And basically, this project started thanks to citizen science. We had a map on the web where people could upload their sightings. If they saw an angel shark, they just had to go to the web, point out where they saw it, and give some brief description of the angel shark and the conditions in which they saw it. And that gave us loads of information. Okay, the citizen science was thanks to scuba divers, free divers, or even bathers that were just on the beach, okay, and could see an angel shark passing by. And I forgot to include in this list fishermen that also have been very important to gather information. So basically, it's thanks to you and everyone that's diving or observing the ocean some matter that this project managed to start and gathered its first data. Okay, so thanks to all that are listening and that have collaborated in this way. So thanks to citizen science, okay, we have established this map where we can find suitable habitat for angel sharks according to the sightings of citizen science. So where there's most sightings, we've also seen that there are more or less the same conditions, that there is a lot of sand, okay, that we find the presence of shallow areas and then deep areas, and just certain conditions that helps us to figure out what is the best habitat for this species. And as you can see on the map, we have some hot spots around the islands where we have most sharks. So that also helps us to focus our research in these places. Thanks to this data, okay, we've got some interesting conclusions. For example, that we see angel sharks, mostly females and babies, between April and July. Now, this is because the females come close to the coast, into the shallows, to give birth. Um, they give birth to the pups that will stay close to in the shallows, close to the shore, for the first year, okay, more or less of their life. Because in the shallows they have food and they have protection. And then we see that during the months of December to February, we have an abundance of females and also males. And this is because we've seen that females and males are mating in this season. It's the mating season for them. They gather also close to the coast, and we've seen the mating process happen. And then the males seem to disappear. Okay, they're not so frequent. And as I said before, the females then stay around or come back in April to give birth to their pups. Here I've put an image so you can see some more information about the adult angel sharks. We can differentiate females and males thanks to the claspers, as most sharks are raised. Okay, you see the claspers underneath. They're quite visible in angel sharks, especially when they're swimming. When they're buried, obviously it's difficult to see if they're male or female. The average length here in the Canary Islands is more or less 1 meter 50, while the biggest record has been 2 meters 44. I have to admit, we've never seen a squatina that big here. Okay, the average ones we see here, the adults are 1 meter 50. I guess that is 5 feet, more or less. 5 feet, yeah. And we see that there are small differences between males and females. The claspers are one, but also we see that females, like most sharks, are bigger. They're usually wider, and they're also longer than the males. Then a bit more about reproduction. As I said, during the research in these years, we've seen cool images, and we've seen interesting things like big aggregations to mate. So we basically have seen in places where we find loads of females and a couple of males all in the same area for maybe 2 weeks between 2 weeks and a month's time. And during that period, what we think is that they're mating, and they've concentrated in that area just for that purpose. The mating, as in most sharks, the male bites the female to be able to grab her, and then uses one of the claspers, okay, to introduce the sperm inside the female, okay, in order to do the fertilization. So they have internal fertilization. Then we can see that the females during the season, they have these scars on the pectoral fin. Okay, we call them love bites. So the females present these scars, but sharks have this amazing ability to cure themselves very fast. So in just a couple of weeks, they'll be totally recovered from these little wounds that are caused from mating. Angel sharks, they are what we call lethidotrophic oviviviparous. Okay, that's their way of reproducing. Basically, sharks start or begin as eggs inside the mum. They feed on the yolk sac of that egg, and when they're big enough and they're fully developed, then the mum will give birth to these fully developed angel sharks. So this one we see at the bottom, sadly, it's probably been premature birth, and we can see that it still has some of that yolk sac attached to it, but that's not normal. A female can give birth between 7 to 25 pups. That depends on the size of the female. The gestation period is pretty long, like in most sharks, between 8 and 10 months. And the size when born is between 24 and 30 centimeters. So they're pretty small. They're super cute. The juveniles, when born, okay, you can already, they're fully developed sharks, and we can already see if they're male or female when they're born. Here we can see female, and the males have these claspers that have started to develop on the back of the body. And well, juveniles are like key for the conservation of the species, and lots of our research has been focused on nursery areas, places where the females give birth, and the angel sharks, the juveniles, they stay there until they're ready to leave and go to other depths. So we're studying different places around the Canary Islands to check out what places are nursery areas. Because when we're talking about conservation, these areas are critical for the conservation of the species, and they need some regulations and some extra protection. We found this place called Las Teresitas, the place we can find in the picture. Okay, now this area is the biggest angel shark nursery area described up to the moment. And it's curious because this is actually, in fact, an artificial beach that was made more than 20 years ago with sand that actually comes from the Sahara Desert in Africa. Well, the angel sharks here have found an ideal place to grow up in the first stage of their life. They have protection against predators, and they have plenty of food. And this place has become also a really important laboratory for us and for our research. Even though the angel sharks here have to live with lots of people, and that does cause some problems. Okay, sometimes the baby angel sharks, they stay close to the shore after eating during the night, and they're resting there. And when the tide goes down, people walk into the beach and sometimes by accident step on them. Obviously, these babies, frightened, sometimes defend themselves by giving little bites, but nothing serious. We collaborate with the Red Cross, with lifeguards, and they always keep us informed about these incidents. But this is why it's so important, especially this place, to find a balance and to help people understand that this is a critically endangered species and that this is a really important place for its conservation, and that we need to find a way to all live together and be able to coexist, for people to be able to enjoy the beach and for the angel sharks to be able to grow up and live there in a safe way. So the research in this beach, in Las Teresitas, the research we do at night because it's easier to find the baby sharks at nighttime with the torches, their eyes, thanks to the tapetum lucidum, little layer they have in their eyes. Their eyes, they shine with the torches, just like cats in the night. So it makes us easier to find them. And so we catch the sharks at night. We put them in these little white things, the little buckets here, and we take them to a table where we complete some basic procedures. We put a little pit tag in them, a little tag with a specific code. Then also we take a tiny biopsy to do DNA studies. We take all the measurements possible. We measure the length, the width, we measure the claspers, the males. We weigh them, we see if they're male or female. And once they're ready, we take them back into the sea and they're released with no problem. This procedure takes like 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes maximum. So the sharks go back, no problem, they swim off. Obviously, it causes a stress like any type of research, but all of this has been under a lot of supervision, and so it's done to create the least impact possible. So this project, lots of people have been invited, students to help out, and we always invite people to come along, and it also helps to make people more conscious of the species and what we're doing with them. So Anyway, I think time is more or less up. So if you want to know more about the Angel Shark Project and the other research we do, please go to our web, angelsharkproject.com. You will also find us on Instagram, Angel Shark Project, Facebook, and Twitter. And yeah, we'd be more than happy to receive emails and information, not only about Squatina, but any angel shark you might have seen. And yeah, I just hope you all enjoyed this presentation. And thanks to obviously to all our founders and supporters.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. That was really interesting. And angel sharks have always been on my bucket list, so I hope I get out to see them one day. I have a few questions for you. The first one being, are angel sharks your favorite shark?
No, my favorite shark at the beginning, I have to admit. Okay, I've seen many, I've been diving with different sharks around the world, but the thing with angel sharks, even though they're not the typical shark, the more I get to know them, the more I fall in love with them, and the more I appreciate them. And you can see that they each have their own personality, and they're really special in so many ways that I think they are becoming my favorite shark.
Awesome. And if for some of the people watching us, they hope to one day go in and do become marine biologists or help sharks in some way. What is your advice for those people?
Well, my advice would be to never give up. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. I went through some trouble also. I knew this is what I wanted to do, but it wasn't easy to get to my position right now. What I did is started out by diving, observing sharks, and informing myself about different species and just getting to know more about sharks and conservation and what was happening to them and all the threats that are actually on shark populations now. And then I started to collaborate in NGOs. I established my own NGO when I was finishing uni, when I was finishing college, and I participated in different conservation projects. And then I wasn't afraid to move, so I worked in different places around the world, sometimes not getting paid or getting paid very little. But it's just slowly building and never giving up, and you will get to where you want to go.
Great.
So yeah, I really encourage everyone to not to pursue their dream, and they'll get there definitely.
That's great advice. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about angel sharks specifically. You've told us a lot about your research in the Canaries. I know that the Angel Shark Project has a project in Wales. Can you share a little bit about that project with us?
Yeah, so Wales, it all started because there was a guy, Jake, as part of the project. Well, he was doing part of his thesis, I think, in college, and he found out that there were some sightings of angel sharks in Wales, and he started to go into historical sightings to seeing when angel sharks had been caught in the past. But the more he started, the more research he did, and the more talks he had with fishermen, he started to realize that fishermen gave angel sharks different names, and that many fishermen actually called angel sharks monkfish. That's another completely different fish. So he started to realize that fishermen were still catching angel sharks. They were just calling it with another name, monkfish. So then he started to do more research and like set up this network to gather more information and to make people conscious of the existence of the angel shark, and that it is an angel shark. It's a shark, and it's a critically endangered shark. And the project's building up from there, and it's getting bigger and bigger each year.
Awesome. Yeah, so there's a couple of things in there. There's the fact that in Wales, but in other places, angel sharks used to be very present. They used to be there, and now they're the second most threatened family of sharks. What you talked a little bit about fishing pressures. Does anything do angel sharks face any other threats from humans?
Yeah, so fishing will probably be the main threat, but obviously habitat destruction is another important one. So we said that angel sharks, they need the babies, they grow up in shallow areas. So obviously if these shallow areas get disturbed or destroyed because we're building harbors or other infrastructures, well then we're destroying that critical habitat. And obviously another important issue would probably be pollution, but there's still not enough information to relate pollution with impacts on or a decline of angel shark numbers.
Right. So there's still a lot of mysteries around angel sharks and around not just around what threats they face, but also around what about themselves, about the animals themselves. What is one of the mysteries around angel sharks that you would love to see get solved?
I think movement patterns is one of the things that we hope to know this year. We'll probably have some results from our DNA and genetic research. So the thing is, we see the pups and we see the adults, but then there's times of the year where they disappear, and the question is, where are they going? Are they just going to deeper waters? Do they move between islands? Are there migrations? And if these migrations happen, how big are these migrations or where do they go to? And then there's another mystery that when the angel sharks go over 38 centimeters, okay, they disappear from the nursery areas, from the shallows, and they disappear. And then you see bigger adult angel sharks that are usually over 80 centimeters or a meter. So there's like this gap. We call them unicorns because it's actually very hard to see those middle-sized sharks that measure between 50 centimeters and 89 centimeters. And it's a big mystery. Where do they go?
That's
So
so interesting.
those are the things.
Yeah, there's so many things that we still don't know, not just about angel sharks, but about sharks in general, about where they go and where they give birth, that I think people don't always realize how much there still is to discover. And the people that are going to discover that are like some of the people that are watching us right now. So for anyone watching, if you are interested in going into marine biology, just know that there's still so much more to discover. But until they get to the point where they can research sharks, can you tell us maybe a little bit more about how people can help angel sharks today? You told us about the citizen science that you do. Is there any other ways that they can help angel sharks?
So yes, citizen science is very useful. Anyone that sees an angel shark to record it on our website. And then just mainly talking to others about the issue, talking about the importance of the conservation of the species. They can also help us out if they're in the Canary Islands and we have one of our campaigns, they can join us and help out. We have a big network of volunteers that's super helpful, and without them, everything would be more difficult. And yeah, definitely just to talk about sharks and the importance they have, their role in the oceans as apex predators, and that without sharks, our oceans won't be as healthy, and we basically need healthy oceans for our own existence. So it's just having angel sharks and sharks in general presence and taking care of them.
Awesome. Okay, a couple more questions. One of them is, so you've told us that you work with fishermen a fair amount, that the Angel Shark Project works a lot with fishermen. Why do you think it's so important to work with fishermen?
So yeah, fishermen are many times seen as an enemy for marine conservation, but we have to try and make them allies. and they can be the best allies or really good allies because they're in the ocean every day fishing. They fish under the depths that dives can go to. So they have lots of information of what's happening down there. Many times they catch species like angel sharks in certain seasons more than others. So if they are our allies, they won't be afraid to tell us and give us that information, and that would be really useful um, for establishing regulations on sharks. It is sometimes difficult because they think that the more we know, we're going to give them restrictions. But now that the angel shark is protected anyway, um, they don't want to catch the angel shark or want to avoid catching it. And they want to especially avoid, if they catch it by mistake, they want to avoid that angel shark dying. So they are also very willing to collaborate now, most of them. So we just have to really see them as allies and work with them and definitely not against them.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Fishermen have a lot of knowledge that is often untapped. And so making them our allies, it's really definitely an advantage for us. Okay, second to last question. I know that you're a really good photographer. Some of your photos that I've seen are incredible. Why, to you, how useful is photography to research? How do you use it as a tool for your research?
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm glad you like them. It has been actually very useful. It helps you as a scientist to get back and to look at the details. Once you've taken images underwater, then you obviously everything happens very fast under the water and you have a limited time. So you come back and you look in the computer and you can see the details of what you've just seen and appreciate things. And then it's the way to transmit what you've seen underwater to the general public and people that haven't had that opportunity to see what you've seen underwater. So the better photo is, the more beautiful you can get a photo, the more you will surprise people and you will make them be more in love with what you're seeing. I'm not sure if that makes sense. It's like to engage people with what you're seeing underwater.
Yeah.
And it's a great tool for outreach. So like all things, all the publications we do, if it goes with nice images underwater, it always makes people feel closer. And I don't know, like to know better what we're speaking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So I
really
think it's
like
a
that.
really interesting tool.
Yeah, I really like that way of putting it. Yeah, definitely. All right, last question, an easy one. What's your favorite fact about angel sharks?
Favorite facts about angel sharks? I
Might
don't
not
know.
be.
There's lots of facts. Um, favorite facts. Favorite facts. I think it would be it's probably not a fact itself, but I think oh yes, it's the babies being really close to the shore, but sometimes we find like 20 centimeters of water and grouping out to hunt. We don't know why that happens. And seeing them leap out of the sand at that speed to catch their prey and to see how fast they do it, I think that's astonishing. And I think that would be the most fascinating thing about them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael. That was really great. If anyone wants to find out more about the Angel Shark Project, they can visit your website and your social media. Do you want to share what those are? I know you put it at the end of the slide, so maybe sharing it again, just so.
Yeah, sure. I'll share it again. Just again, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to be here speaking about angel sharks. And yeah, I hope you will have a lovely International Angel Shark Day, and I hope we have many more International Angel Shark Days throughout the years with
Awesome.
lots of good news.
Thank you so much. And if anyone wants to watch this again, it will be posted on our YouTube channel as well, along with all of the other webinars that we've been doing. So you can visit sharksforkids.com/webinars to see all of those. Michael, thank you so much. Have a lovely afternoon and we'll see you all soon.